Hi, welcome to Rules Challenge. My name is Carter Maxwell, and in this episode we're going to be taking a look at the game Terra Mystica. Now, for those of you who are new to the show, you're basically just going to be watching me run through some turns of a more or less regular game, but at the end of each turn I'll stop and ask legal or illegal, and it's your job to figure out if what you saw during that turn was done correctly. And then I'll go on and answer the question and give some explanation. Rather than just picking things randomly from the rulebook, though, I do try to emphasize rules that people genuinely tend to misunderstand or forget. So it does end up functioning somewhat like a video FAQ as well. Usually during the introduction to the challenge, I like to offer some suggestions to new players. Nothing really came to mind, though, when I was working on this video. The one thing I will say, though, is I think there's maybe more examples than usual here that a veteran player may consider just too basic. But everything I included, I really have seen examples of new players forgetting or just doing incorrectly. So I thought all these examples were important to include. Okay, I think we're pretty much ready to get started. As in most of my videos, we are starting well into the game. We're just starting the fourth round. And the halflings are our start players, so we'll start with them. Alright, we're going to start things off with the halflings, since they've got the start player marker, and they want to transform and build in this lakes hex. We'll check their player board, and it's going to require 2 transformations to turn those lakes into halflings' home terrain. And we see she's lowered her exchange rate, so now it'll only cost her 1 worker per spade. So she'll pay those 2 workers, and she'll put down a plains tile there. The halflings have the special ability that gives them a victory point every time they spend a spade. So we'll mark 2 points on the scoring track. The halflings also want to build there. That'll cost them 1 worker and 2 coins. So we'll pay the worker 2 coins and place the dwelling. The witches have a structure adjacent to where the halflings just put that dwelling, so they can gain 1 power. Hopefully you can see this okay. It's a little tough with dark purple tokens on a dark purple background, but the witches still have 3 tokens in their first bowl, so we'll move 1 up to the second bowl. Everything the halflings did this turn was legal. This is starting really basic, but I just wanted to show that it's allowed to transform across multiple terrain types in a single turn. People sometimes assume the halflings would have had to just transfer 1 terrain type 1 turn, and then the next turn transfer it the second time. But that's not the case. You can use as many spades as you need to transform it all the way to your home terrain. Now it's the mermaid's turn, and they want to upgrade this dwelling into a trading post. That'll cost them 2 workers and 3 coins. So we'll pay the 2 workers and the 3 coins. And we'll place that trading post. And we'll replace the dwelling on the mat. The nomads have an adjacent structure, and since that was a 2 power building the mermaids just placed, the nomads will gain 2 power. And they'll move 2 tokens from bowl 2 to bowl 3. And since they gain 2 power, we'll mark them down 1 victory point. And last, we need to make sure we give the mermaids credit for this favor tile that gives her 3 points when she places a trading post. So we'll mark that. 1, 2, 3. The part of that turn that was illegal was actually done by the nomads rather than the mermaids. When you have a chance to gain power because of your opponent building or upgrading adjacent to one of your buildings, the power you can gain is based on your building or buildings, not the type of building that's being built or upgraded next to you. The power value of the nomads building was only 1, so the nomads only got to gain 1 power there. The fact that the mermaids built a level 2 power building was irrelevant. Moving on to the nomads' turn, they want to build a dwelling in this space that they had transformed to sand in a previous round. The nomads will pay 1 worker and 2 coins and place the dwelling. The mermaids have level 1 shipping, so they have 2 structures that are indirectly adjacent to that hex, so they'll gain a total of 3 power. So we'll move 3 tokens from bowl 1 to bowl 2, and we'll reduce them by 2 victory points. And last, the nomads have the favor tile that gives them 2 points when they place a dwelling, so we'll give them 2 points. 1, 2. Again, on that turn, the mistake was made by a faction that wasn't even active. The mermaids should not have gained power when the nomads built on that space. Make sure you understand the difference between direct and indirect adjacency, because the distinction is important for several different things in this game. For the purposes of gaining power, a faction must be directly adjacent to the space where the dwelling is being placed or a building is being upgraded. And directly adjacent means that you share an edge with the hex where the upgrade is being made or where the dwelling is being placed. So mermaids would have needed to have a structure here or here in order to gain power from that placement. Now the witches are up and they want to upgrade this trading post to a stronghold. That'll cost them 4 workers and 6 coins. So we'll pay the 4 workers and the 6 coins, and we'll place the stronghold. And the nomads have a chance to gain power from that. The halflings have a dwelling adjacent, so we'll give them 1 power for that, and that won't cost them any victory points. The nomads have a level 3 power building and a level 2 next to that, so they can gain a total of 5. However, they're close to being maxed out on power. Their bowl 1 is empty and they only have 3 in bowl 2. So we'll move those 3 over and we'll reduce them by 2 victory points. And then double checking the scoring tile, we see that building a stronghold or sanctuary this round is worth 5 points, so we'll award that to the witches. So we'll move them from 51 to 56. Everything on this turn was done correctly, but there are a couple rules about gaining power that are worth talking about. First, when another player offers you power, you have to take all or nothing. So say you have an opportunity to gain 5 power, you can't just decide that you don't want to lose so many victory points, so instead you'll maybe just take 3 power and lose 2 victory points. But in this case, the nomads didn't decide to take less than 5 power. They had no choice because they only were able to gain 3 until they were maxed out. In that case, it is acceptable to gain less than what would otherwise have been allowed. The other aspect of this that's worth pointing out is the nomads lost victory points based on what they actually gained, not based on what they could have gained. So it was correct that instead of losing 4 victory points, they just lost the 2. Okay, we've come back around to the halflings, and they want to upgrade this dwelling here. They want to upgrade it to a temple, and that'll cost 2 workers and 5 coins. So we'll pay the 2 workers and 5 coins, and we'll place the temple. The mermaids have a dwelling adjacent to that temple, so they can gain 1 power. So we'll mark that. Upgrading to a temple allows the halflings to claim a favor tile. So they'll claim this one here that will cause them to found towns when they reach 6 power. That tile also earns them 2 steps on the fire cult track. So we'll mark that. 1, 2, and the halflings just crossed this power threshold, so they'll gain 1 power. And we'll mark that. Checking over the map, the halflings actually have a collection of buildings that cover 4 hexes and are a total of 6 power, so they need to found a town now. They've decided on this one that is worth 7 points and will give them 2 workers. So they'll place that under one of their structures. We'll mark those 7 points. 1, 2, 7. And the halflings will take their 2 workers. Okay, if you're not completely new to the game and you're watching this, you're probably thinking, well, this one was a little bit silly. But this is a mistake that more than one new player has made. The halflings should not have upgraded a dwelling directly to a temple. You know, it's not totally crazy that people sometimes think that there's 2 separate tech tracks here: dwelling, trading post, stronghold, dwelling, temple, sanctuary. Unless you've looked closely at the flowchart in the rule book or have picked up on these little arrows here on the player mat. Some people just think that you upgrade vertically. But remember, it is always dwelling to trading post, and then from there you can split, either going to the stronghold or over to temple and sanctuary. Moving on to the mermaids, they want to do this 2-spade power action, and that'll cost 6 power. They have exactly that in their 3rd bowl, so they'll slide all those down to the 1st bowl. They want to transform this swamp space to lakes, and that's just 1 step, so that'll use 1 spade, and they'll put the new terrain marker there. They want to also build there. That'll cost 1 worker and 2 coins, so they'll spend that. And they'll place their dwelling. With their 2nd spade, they want to transform this forest space to lakes, and that's, again, just 1 step. So they'll place that terrain tile. And then to wrap up, they'll move the action marker down to cover that power action space. The mermaids tried to take advantage of a special rule for that 2-spade power action, but they took it a bit too far. Normally, when you're transforming terrain, you can only do it on 1 hex. The double-spade power action is a special case, though, and they don't make you waste that 2nd spade if you only need 1 spade to convert the space to your home terrain. So when mermaids converted this space to lakes, and she had a spade left over, she was allowed to use that spade on another hex. However, it had to be a hex that she was already adjacent to at the time she started the action. When she started this action, she was adjacent to this one, but she would have needed level 2 shipping to also be adjacent to this one at that time. And even though she ended up placing a dwelling here, which brings her adjacent to this space, it wasn't there at the start of her turn, so she couldn't transform this one legally. In case this is catching some people off guard, I should note that this isn't super clear in the rule book, but the designer of the game has confirmed this interpretation online. Now the nomads are up, and they want to use their stronghold special action. That allows them to place a desert terrain. They'll place it next to their dwelling here. Now they want to place a dwelling there. So they'll pay a worker and 2 coins for that. And they'll place the dwelling. The nomads have the favor tile that gives you 2 points when you place a dwelling. So we'll mark those points. 1, 2. And then we'll cover that special action space with an action marker. Everything on that turn was legal, nothing super noteworthy. Maybe a good time, though, to point out that the Nomad special action does not trigger the spade scoring bonus. Sometimes when the spade scoring tile is in play, people will transform with that sandstorm, and they'll say, okay, well, I transformed terrain 2 steps, so that's equivalent to 2 spades, I get 4 points. But remember, the nomads aren't using shovels to change that hex into desert. They're using a sandstorm, which is a different thing. Compare that to something like the giant special ability, which is very similar, but it does use spades. So the giants do score for the spade scoring bonus when that's in play, but the nomads do not. Moving on to the witches, they also want to use their stronghold special ability, and that will allow them to place a dwelling, and they don't have to pay for it, so we'll go ahead and place it. Now put it on this forest space here. Just like the nomads, they have the favor tile for 2 points when you place a dwelling, so we'll mark that. 1, 2. Also, this round the witches have the bonus card that gives you a point per dwelling, so she'll go ahead and score a point for that. And finally, she'll cover up that special action space. The thing the witches did that was illegal there was immediately taking that 1 point for placing that dwelling based on the bonus card. Let's take a quick look at the favor tile that seems so similar. Now this one, when you have it in your possession, when you place a dwelling, you immediately score 2 points. But the bonus cards are different. Those are only activated when you pass and return them. And then when you do return it, it's not a point for every dwelling you placed that round. It's a point for all dwellings you have on the map. So the witches shouldn't have immediately gotten a point when they place that dwelling, but if it is still on the map when they pass, they will get a point for it. Now it's the halflings' turn, and they want to advance on the shipping track, so they'll use a priest and spend 4 coins for that. So they'll use up the priest, spend the 4 coins, and we'll advance the marker and give them 2 points. 1, 2. Everything the halflings did that turn was legal, and it's really a simple turn. First, I just do want to point out, though, make sure you're always taking those points when you advance on that track. For some reason, maybe I'm the only moron that can't remember to do it, but it always seems like I'm advancing on that track at some crucial point in the game where I'm trying to beat somebody to a space or trying to get area scoring near the end of the game, and I forget all about that. So don't be like me. Take your points. I think it might be helpful also to point out the distinction between a permanent advance on the shipping track versus the temporary advance you get from this bonus card. Let's just say the halflings are at 0 on their shipping level, and at the end of the round, they expect to get a free spade from the Earth cult bonus, and they want to reach across a river to transform some terrain across that river. Well, this bonus card would do them no good because, keep in mind, toward the end of the round, they'll be passing, turning this in, getting a new one, and now they don't have any advance on their shipping at all to make use of that. Now, I think most people plan for this situation pretty well because they're very aware that when they pass, they'll be turning this back in and acquiring a new bonus card. Where people tend to make the mistake is, let's say they've got a different bonus card, and then they pass and acquire this bonus card. They assume this is in effect through all phases, and so when we get to the cult bonus phase, they will have +1 shipping and will be able to reach out across the river and transform with that spade. But that's not the case. With the bonus card advance on shipping, that's only active during the action phase of a round. So that won't be in effect during the cult bonus, and the halflings wouldn't be able to reach across the river to use that spade. All right, now the mermaids are up, and they want to upgrade this dwelling to a trading post, and it is adjacent to some opponent structures, so they'll get the discount. So that'll cost 2 workers and 3 coins. They're loaded with workers. We'll spend 2 of those. But they're actually short of the coins, so they have a couple options. They need to do a conversion. They can either convert a worker to a coin, or they can sacrifice some power. So they'll go ahead and sacrifice power. So we'll remove 1 from the game and slide 1 to the 3rd bowl, and then we'll spend it for a coin. And then they'll spend all 3 of their coins. And then they'll place that trading post. and put the dwelling back on their mat. The witches have a dwelling next to that space, so they'll gain 1 power. So we'll move a power from bowl 1 to bowl 2, and that won't cost the witches any victory points. The halflings have a total of 3 power worth of structures next to that space, so they can gain 3 power and pay 2 victory points, and they'll go ahead and do that. The halflings don't have any tokens in bowl 1, so we'll move 3 from bowl 2. And we'll mark them down 2 points. And then the last thing we need to do, the mermaids have this favor tile that gives them 3 points when they build a trading post. So we'll give them 3 points for that. 1, 2, 3. Question I've heard asked many times is, can you sacrifice power even if you still have power tokens in bowl 1? And the answer to that is yes. If you remember, during that turn, the mermaids had 4 tokens in bowl 2, removed 1, slid 1 to bowl 3, and then converted it to a coin. And that sometimes looks illegal to people because they're thinking of the rules for gaining power. Remember, when you're gaining power, any tokens that are in bowl 1 would have to be moved, and that bowl would have to be totally empty before you can start moving them from bowl 2 to bowl 3. But sacrificing power works differently. It doesn't matter what you have in bowl 1 or whether or not it's empty. We're only concerned about what's going on in bowl 2. You take a piece out of the game, you slide 1 over to bowl 3. And you can do that as many times as you like, as long as you still have tokens in bowl 2 to work with. Moving on to the nomads, they want to upgrade this temple to a sanctuary. Before they do that, though, they expect to be gaining some power this turn and don't want to waste it, so they're going to do a conversion. They'll spend 1 power and gain 1 coin. The sanctuary will cost the nomads 4 workers and 6 coins, so we'll spend the 4 workers and the 6 coins. And then we'll place the sanctuary. And we'll return the temple. The witches can gain 3 power for that, and they'll accept it. So we'll give them their 3 power. 1, 2, 3. And we'll subtract 2 victory points. The scoring tile for this round gives 5 points when you build a stronghold or sanctuary. So we'll give the nomads 5 points for that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Another thing they get for building that sanctuary is they get to take a favor tile. So they'll take this fire cult tile. And that will move them up 1 space on the fire cult track. One more thing we have to do is look at whether or not nomads should be founding a town. They have these 3 buildings grouped together for a total of 7 power points. And they do have the sanctuary in that group, so they have to found a town. They'll take this one that's worth 8 victory points and allows them to move up 1 space on every cult track. We'll move them up 8 victory points from 29 to 37. Then we'll move them up 1 step on each cult track. And they pass 2 power markers worth 1 each, so they'll get 2 power. 1, 2. And to wrap up their turn, the nomads need to place this town tile, so they'll put it under this dwelling. Everything the nomads did on their turn was fine. I do want to comment on a couple things. First, it was fine the way the nomads handled the conversion. Remember that that's not an action that would end your turn. That's something you do in addition to your regular action. And it's something you always want to be thinking about before you finish your turn or pass at the end of the round. It's often a mistake to leave yourself maxed out on power and no ability to accept power that's offered to you when somebody upgrades a structure adjacent to you. I also want to say something about the sanctuary. The way that nomads did it was right. Normally they would have needed to occupy 4 hexes in order for this to become a town, but because they had this sanctuary built here, it only needed to cover 3 hexes. But there's sometimes confusion about how the sanctuary works. People see this icon when they remove the sanctuary from their player mat and think that that's a general ability they have for the rest of the game. In other words, going forward for the rest of the game, they only need 3 hexes in order to found a town. But that's wrong. It's not a general ability. It only applies to the actual town where the sanctuary is located on the map. All right, I think we'll wrap things up there. Hopefully you got something useful out of the video. As always, if you think I got something wrong or just have a question, don't hesitate to leave a comment. Again, I'm Carter Maxwell. This has been Rules Challenge, and hopefully I'll see you soon.